then sell that, the Taliban, sell that, the warlords do also, and they make money, and then they're able to purchase arms, which are then directed against NATO troops. And the biggest unintended consequence of Afghanistan is Pakistan. Now, Pakistan controls all the elements of what gives you an international migraine. They have nuclear weapons, they have terrorism, extremism, poverty, corruption, and now a government that is trying to, is kind of a marriage of convenience of a coalition that was just elected and President Bashar, who's hanging on by the skin of his teeth. But basically, very complicated situation, and the complicating factor is we need Pakistan in order to have a staging area to deal with Afghanistan. And the issues that are on the borders in Waziristan, on the border there where people think Osama bin Laden might be or where there are trainers going on. So that is a huge issue for the next president. And then there's the war in Iraq. I have said that the war in Iraq will go down in history as the greatest disaster in American foreign policy. Now, I know that's quite a statement because it means that I think it's worse than Vietnam. And I do think it is, not in terms of the numbers of Americans who have been killed or Vietnamese versus Iraqis, but in terms of those unintended consequences. We know that Iraq itself is in a state of dissolution, but Iran is the biggest unintended consequence. A country that is being run by somebody that says the most ludicrous statements, and it verges on being a nut. But basically, it is a country that has regained an incredible influence. And again, all you have to do is read the papers any morning, and you can see what influence Iran is playing in Iraq in terms of supplying the devices that blow up or having some kind of a strange effect on whatever's happening, trying to get a government going in Iraq. So Iran is the biggest unintended consequence. There also are refugees that are coming out of Iraq and have the potential of destabilizing the countries around because 2.5 million refugees are outside of Iraq and about the same number are displaced persons in Iraq. And basically the Middle East is a very dangerous area. I don't want to put down the importance of Southeast Asia, but the bottom line is, in terms of the largeness of the Iraqi disaster, a lot has to do where it is located and the effect on the region. So the next president has to end the war in Iraq and win the war in Afghanistan and deal with the difficult issues of Pakistan and Iran. Also, I think that not much attention has been paid to what is going on in Africa, where all of a sudden there can be a bad election in Kenya that creates instability in that country. We are watching Zimbabwe fall apart. More people die in the Congo than people even know about because CNN is not paying attention to it. And there are huge issues in terms of health, poverty, food, etc. in Africa. And Latin America. The relationship of the U.S. with Latin America has always been very complicated. I have to tell you, it's a little bit, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't, because if we don't pay attention to Latin America, they feel neglected. If we pay too much attention, then they think we're interfering in their domestic affairs. But the bottom line is we are linked to Latin America. The solidarity of the Americas is something that is very important to our culture, our history, and our economy. And the problem is that the democratic trend that was going on in Latin America is being reversed. Now, I do know this may sound Marxist, but the bottom line is people want to vote and eat. And what has happened is that democracy has not delivered. And so I used to go to Venezuela quite often, and the place was run by a bunch of tired old men. And I can understand how Hugo Chavez got elected. But he has turned his initial mandate into some kind of a dictatorial populism and is getting countries together who dislike us, and is spending his vast oil wealth to influence people in countries in a very negative way. So that is the agenda. It's going to take a very different approach. Just telling you about what the issues are makes it absolutely clear I would hope, that these are not issues the United States can handle alone. We do have an incredible military, and I think we all know that we owe them a great debt of gratitude, but just listing the issues, the 5 big umbrella issues, are not military issues. They are issues that have to be dealt with in conjunction with other countries. They are, by their very nature, known as transnational issues. So we need to deal differently with our allies to try to develop a better partnership with Europe. It would be good if they stopped examining themselves all the time, but they do need to work with us. We need a different relationship with Russia. We need to take cognizance of the fact of growing importance of China and India, and just look differently at how the international system works. So it is a huge agenda, and the next president is going to have a very large job. I do support Hillary Clinton, and I know her very well, and that's why I'm supporting her. We did go to the same college, Wellesley. She's 10 years younger than I am, but I do know where she got her study habit. I also followed her career with great interest, even as she was First Lady of Arkansas, because of her dedication to children. And I always thought it was kind of interesting that she took upon herself the leadership of the Children's Defense Fund, and it seemed characteristic to me of a person who cared about those who couldn't care for themselves. I mean, there's no group of people that are more in that position than children. And so her dedication to defending children, I found a very moving and really symbolic aspect of what Hillary Clinton is like. When I was made ambassador to the UN, she took a great interest in what was going on there. And some of the delegates up there asked me, well, is this what Eleanor Roosevelt was like? And I said, you know, I don't know. I mean, I've read about Eleanor Roosevelt, but I didn't really know her. Although there were all those jokes about Hillary channeling with Eleanor Roosevelt. But I thought it was interesting that they noted that we had another American First Lady who was truly interested in international affairs and a variety of issues that were coming out of the UN. She came out there a number of times, and then we went to Beijing. I was technically the leader of the delegation to the Women's Conference of Beijing, but Hillary obviously made the symbolic speech about human rights or women's rights and women's rights or human rights, and that became kind of the slogan of the international women's movement, and was really important throughout the world, because more than half the population of the world are women. Now, I have to say, I personally take offense when some people say, well, meeting with women's groups in countries is not doing real work. It shows to me that people don't understand how societies work, not only in developed, but in developing countries. Because what happened in primarily developing countries, and those that had ethnic or religious or border conflicts, it was actually the women's groups that brought together people from a variety of the whatever country we were in, and were able to begin to talk about conflict resolution and how to deal with the issues. So to me, that is a real sense about where a society is, and how Hillary saw the importance of dealing and going to visit with women's groups and human rights groups. She visited also with a lot of leaders, and when I was Secretary of State, I really saw her as a terrific partner in all of this, and sometimes we traveled together, mostly separately, but I could see how